Good everyone, welcome to this video, and today we are going to be covering the Air RB Daily Medium tasks, and later we'll also be covering the Tank RB Daily Medium tasks. The medium tasks can only be done by rank 3 and above vehicles, whereas the easy tasks, which you may have seen in if you've been watching the entire playlist that is, can be done in rank 2 and above. Obviously the medium tasks are going to be a little bit harder, there's also more of them, so we're probably going to be here a little longer. But that's perfectly fine. One last thing before we begin, I would appreciate if you shared this video, because that not only helps others who may be struggling with this, but also it might add some knowledge to other communities, and it would be nice. One other thing is there is a link in the description to the Discord server if you wish to join it. We will obviously help you out with your daily tasks, your special tasks, and anything you could really need. Anyway, let's get started with Wing to Wing. When required number of battles for the total amount of teamwork and supporting fire streaks received in every battle being greater than or equal to 2, teamwork supporting fire 1 victory. This can be pretty much done with everything. You just need to win, and you just need to stay near your squad mate, because in War Thunder by default there's a auto squad mate, which you have that turned on by default. But obviously you can turn that off, so if you turn that off, that's why the Discord server is open. If you don't trust people who are random in the game, you can obviously come into our community and we will obviously help you out with this task. Getting the victory can obviously be difficult depending on the BR you pick and obviously the nation that you pick. But generally speaking, if you try hard enough with a couple of mates and a couple of allies, you'll easily get this done. So pretty much just play anything that you feel comfortable with and play with those that will easily support you. Next is Pursuit. Destroy enemy strike aircraft, 3 kills. You do need some firepower to put these down, and stuff like IL-2Ms, which ironically is also a strike aircraft, a T-18B57, a SB2C-5 or 4, vehicles that generally have good firepower will be perfect for this, including Focke-Wulf 190s. This is because strike aircraft tend to be pretty well armoured and they do tend to take a hit or two. So having good firepower to put them down without your teammates coming in and nicking the kills would be ideal for this. My personal favourite vehicle to hunt are the Wyverns, because they always seem to love head-ons, so I always put stealth on my SB2C-5 and they always die. So there you go. Next up is Winged Ally. Help allied players to destroy the enemies. 2 assists. Bots do count for this. Use anything that has light caliber MGs. So something like a Zero, something like a Spitfire, or even 50 cals if you want to be brave and just don't focus fire on like cockpit, engine, etc. or fuel tanks. The only thing you'll need is a crit, and then obviously your teammates come in and finish it off. And given the amount of times that teammates tend to swarm things in War Thunder, this should be done in no time at all. However, if you are struggling, I would personally suggest something like the MC205 Series 1, which it did get a buff to its 50 cals, but it's been toned down a little bit now. Load stealth on both guns, and just watch the crits come in and no kills, and your teammates will do the rest for you. Next up is Aerial Superiority. Play required number of battles where any of the streaks from the list have been received. Hero of the Sky, Thunderer, Tsunami, Survivor, Mission Maker, Punisher, Wingman, Terror of the Sky, Anti-Mech, Bulletproof, Balancer, and On Hand. You only need 2 games for this, and you do not need to win. Pretty much anything can do this, any of these tasks, although my personal suggestion is Thunderer / Anti-Mech. Thunderer requires at least 12 ground targets destroyed. Anti-Mech is anything less than that, and generally you'll get Anti-Mech if you're the second highest in the team in terms of ground target kills. Now obviously depending on the map and the aircraft that you pick, this can be a little bit difficult because some maps are full of tanks, some maps are full of pillboxes, and some planes can't even kill those things. And I will be doing a video in the future on ground targets in general, but generally speaking, you want to go for something like an IL-2, a B-18, a B-25, etc. Something that has good bomb load, good firepower, and just in general has good guns. So you're really going to want something that can bring a lot to the table and can destroy a lot of ground targets if left unchecked. This obviously isn't going to be consistent because Thunderer is one that people try to stop, so just bear that in mind. Next is Crown of Laurel. When a battle taking required place in a team, place 1 to 3, 2 victories. You really need something that's consistent and has good teams, such as 109 F4s LA7s, and Spitfire Mark 9s. Generally speaking, these vehicles are very capable and can easily get the task done. And generally, most of them, obviously the LA7 has a bit of lack of ammo, but to be fair, if you're careful with your trigger finger, it's not a problem. They can generally stay in the fight, farm ground targets, and return to base, load up some bombs or whatever, and you'll be pretty fine for this. If you want something with a little bit more ammo and a little less time on target, you can go for the LA7 B20, which has 3 20mm B20S, which are just rechambered Berezins. But you get 3 guns as opposed to 2. You do only get 130 rounds per gun, but generally speaking, that vehicle can put down targets in less bullet time, even though the 2 Shavak does that just fine. But you get my point. Just something like that would be more than appropriate. Next is the first convergence. When required number of battles, getting the first strike streak, which is just 1. So I would actually skip this one if you don't have a Wyvern, because the Wyvern is probably the easiest one to do this in, I'm not going to lie. As someone who has owned a Wyvern since, it's almost been a year since I've owned a Wyvern, and yet I've only really played it for a short amount of time, but you get my point. But still, the other vehicles that can potentially do it are the B-18B and the IL-2M, and you just have to pray you're fast enough. If an enemy team kill happens, by the way, I just thought I'd advise this. If an enemy team kill happens on the enemy team, or one happens on your own team, you can't actually get this award, which is weird, but it's just how Gaijin is. Anyway, next up is Higher Than the Sky. Play a battle taking required place in the team, 3 games, taking place 1 to 3. Generally, anything that has good ammo capacity is consistent and can net you a lot of points. Spitfires, P-47s, Corsairs, things like that can generally get this done without even trying. Generally speaking, you need something that can do everything pretty well and can even farm ground targets where needed pretty well. So generally speaking, taking something that can do something like that would be more than appropriate. If you're looking for something that's just pure of a fighter though, if you're looking for just fighter kills, something like a Zero, an A7M, I-225 would be more than appropriate for this task. So just give that a go and just see what you think. Next up is Activist. Win required number of battles with needed activity percent, 85% or more activity, 3 victories. And pretty much as long as you play a vehicle of rank 3, this should be simple. If struggling, do play in a squad. That's why the Discord's open. If you are struggling, please do let us know and we will help you out. That's the entire point. That's what we want to do. We want to help people. And trust me, there was a time where I used to struggle on tasks and I never had the help. So that's why I want to extend my knowledge and extend my help towards others who may be struggling. So it's as simple as that. Next up is On and On. Destroy player vehicles using a fighter, 12 kills. Pretty much this can be done in any decently competitive fighter. Mark 5 Spitfire, Yak 3, BF-109 F4, A6M5, Mark 9 Spitfire as I've said earlier, LA7, I'm not going to say anything Swedish apart from the J26. Just generally anything that can fight well can get this done and has good guns. Focke-Wulf 190s are a little bit tricky for some. Obviously, they're easy for me, but that's because I know how to fly them. But generally speaking, you're going to want something that is comfortable for you and comfortable in engagements. Because at the end of the day, it's got to be something that you feel comfortable in, because there's no point playing a plane that you don't like to do this task. And obviously with 12 kills required, you're obviously not going to get that done in one game, unless you're some sort of War Thunder God and you get the luck of the God, or you get the luck of the Irish, I guess. But yeah, don't worry about getting this done in one match, it's not going to happen, but generally speaking, this should be done within a couple of games for most players. Anyway, moving on to turning engagement. Destroy enemy fighters, 10 kills. This is pretty much the same as above. Ignore the bombers and the strike aircraft unless they attack you. This is because you want to save your ammunition for enemy fighters. And generally speaking, if you're fighting the US, there's going to be 4 bombers, 4 attackers, and hardly any fighters. So, ignoring the bombers and the strike aircraft and things like that are generally going to be the ones that you want to avoid. But if they come at you, and you have to defend yourself, just defend yourself. There's no problem with it. Next up is Eagle's Eye. Make required number of critical hits, 14 critical hits. Bots do count. And this is important. You really do want to crit those when you can. Obviously, I've mentioned about bots earlier for Winged Ally, but crits on bots do count, so you can just get easy crits. Otherwise, if you want something that can crit quite consistently, you can use the F4U1D, the Spitfire Mark 5, the P63, although don't fire the 37 because, well then again, no, the 37 got a bit of a nerf, but it depends on the P63 that you use. If you use the Russian one, you're stuck with the AP rounds, which suck, but they do crit. If you've got the French 63, I believe that gets the option to change it. If you have the French P39, by the way, the Battle Pass one, that will do this quite consistently as well. Pretty much anything that can guarantee a crit, and I mean, you can get the kill after, you don't have to go for an assist, but generally speaking, this should be pretty simple to do. Obviously, don't rush the bots at the start of the game, you'll look a right idiot, that's all I'll say. Next is high performance. When required number of battles with a total amount of fighter rescuer and bomber rescuer streaks received in every battle being greater than or equal to 2. You need a victory for this, of course. This is really a teamwork sort of thing, so stay near your team and support them when in trouble. Do this twice per game and this should be easy. Pretty much play anything that you feel like can support the team, so anything that can get stuck in, like a Yak 3, would be more than appropriate. Now when it comes to fighter rescuer and bomber rescuer streaks, what that means is you have to protect your teammates after they've been damaged. So you have to kill the enemy fighter or bomber if it's trying to play as a gunship. You have to kill them to get this task unlocked. This can be a little bit tricky for some, so if you're struggling with this one, I'd actually skip it. But generally speaking, as long as you stay near your team, you should be able to get this done pretty consistently. Next up is War Eagle, I should say. Play a battle destroying required number of enemy aircraft, 2 or more kills, 3 games. And this is, again, one that you can really play what you fancy. And one of my favourite ones to do this in is the P61 Black Widow. This is because you have the 420mm guns to rip a BV apart. If you don't wish to engage the BV from the front with its 413mm machine guns, you can always just sit underneath its turrets, which it can't depress the turrets all the way down. And you can just elevate the 450 cals on the roof of your P61 and just murder them from underneath, so you can do pretty much what you like there. And the P61 can also carry a couple of bombs, so if you really need to get some ground targets as well for like maybe SL, it can definitely do that, and that's one of my favourite ones. But otherwise, F4U1D, P63, 109F4, things like that will just get this done in no time at all. You need 3 games to do this, and getting 2 kills is pretty simple for most. Next is Big Game, destroy enemy bases, 4 bases. This one is generally quite simple, any rank 3 bomber will do, and to continue the joke from the last video, we will not be using a Kai 49 for this example, but generally you want something that can comfortably kill a base. Something like a Kai 49, I don't even think it can kill a base these days. But something like the B18B for Sweden, the ME264, the Year 2s, although if you're using a Year 2, God help you. Generally one that can survive a bit of punishment because you might have to deal with enemy interceptors. But generally speaking, as long as it can kill a base every game, you'll be alright. Next is Clear Sky. Win required number of battles for 50% or more activity. 6 victories. As long as you're consistent and can help the team, pretty much anything can be used here. Excuse me. Got a bit of a sore throat this morning. Generally speaking, this can be done in pretty much anything, as I've already described a bunch of different aircraft, so pretty much just use whichever suits your preference, really. Next is Pull the Trigger. Win required number of battles, get any multi-strike X2 streak in each of them, which I'll explain that one, but you only need 1 of these. Pretty much in this, you need to get several kills in a certain time period. I believe it's 30 seconds. So you want to use something that can get stuck in, like a Spitfire or a Zero. Now obviously, players who actually know what they're doing will not just let you do that. So you do need to time your strikes very carefully. But once you get used to it, I'm sure you'll manage. Next up is Meteor Shower, which is one of my favourite ones to do because of how simple it is. Don't take that out of context, I'm not that simplistic, I do any of these tasks, but when I get these ones, I just enjoy it the most because I always know what to do, and generally speaking, I can get it done in 1 game. But anyway, Destroy ground and waterborne targets using a strike aircraft, 15 targets. Any strike aircraft at this BR can do this with very little issue. Something like an IL-2, HS-129, the PBJ can even do this. Just anything that's a strike aircraft can get this done. It's really not that hard. And to be brutally honest, if you struggle with this, there's really not much else I can suggest other than the ones that I've just suggested. So, yeah, pretty much anything can do this. Next is mass destruction. Destroy ground and waterborne targets using a bomber, 15 targets. Pretty much any bomber can do this without an issue, and generally speaking you want to use one with offensive guns, like the B-25, the B-18B, the Tu-2S, the PE-2 and the B-7A2, as well as the MB-175. These can all comfortably do this, and you should be able to get this done within 1 or 2 games, and this will not be a problem. And heck, if you're lucky like me, you can get it done in 1, so there you go. Next up is interception. Destroy enemy bombers, 3 kills. Now obviously I'm going to bring up the P-61 again because it's a very good plane for this task, but SB-2Cs, MB-175s, Tu-2s, B-18B, they can all get this job done. The B-7A2 can also tag in here. Anything that can get a bomber spawn or climb to bombers fast is very good for this, and given you only need 3, you can hunt the poor sods, and then you can realise that you've done a bad thing because bombers are quite difficult to play for most people. And you can then, I don't know, sit and cry in a corner because you realise that you've probably killed a child who's just trying to play a bomber. But, you know. Jokes aside from Metal Gear Solid, generally speaking, this one's really easy to do. And finally, we come to the best in the air. Play required number of battles where any of the streaks from the list have been received. Hero of the Sky, Thunderer, Tsunami, Survivor, Mission Maker, Punisher, Wingman. You only need 1 game for this. And the one I'd recommend is the same one as earlier, Thunderer. I've obviously mentioned the vehicles from earlier, so if you've obviously skipped right to the end, then, well, I'll explain them briefly anyway. IL-2M, B-18B, things like that can just get this done without even trying. You do need to play situationally aware, though, and obviously with the upcoming, well, you've already seen that video, actually, the strike aircraft video, and obviously the bomber guide can also be pretty useful for that. But generally speaking, this one should be pretty simple to do for most people. But I hope that covers everything, and obviously we're going to be covering the tank tasks later today. But of course, I'll probably do that at some point because my throat's quite sore at the minute. But you'll obviously see that later today in a few hours. But if you're watching the playlist, however, that'll obviously be the next video in the queue. But, you know. Anyway, I hope that's helped out everyone with anything that you might need help with, really. If you have any suggestions for any of the tasks and what vehicles you personally use for them, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear some of your preferences, so to speak. But anyway, I'm going to leave you all to it. I hope you enjoyed today's video on the ARB Daily Medium Task, and I will see you all on the next one.